1 year later, Germanicus is dead. The official story says sudden illness. The whispered story says poison ordered by someone close to the emperor, perhaps the emperor himself. Caligula is 8 years old when the machine begins devouring his family. His mother Agrippina is dragged from their home at night, accused of treason. His eldest brother, Nero Caesar, is imprisoned in a cell barely large enough for him to stand. They starve him until he tries to eat the stuffing from his mattress. His second brother, Drusus, is exiled to a barren island where guards torture him until he smashes his own head against the stone walls to end the suffering. One by one, they vanish, and young Caligula watches it all. He sees the Roman state, the same structure his father served faithfully, turn into a killing machine aimed directly at his bloodline. By 19, he is the last one left, the final survivor of his lineage, and then the summons arrives. The emperor wants to see him, Tiberius, on the island of Capri. Capri is beautiful, a paradise turned prison. Tiberius has converted it into his personal fortress, far from Rome, far from the Senate, far from anyone who might object to the horrors that unfold there. Ancient historians like Suetonius and Tacitus, writing within living memory of these events, describe Capri as a house of nightmares. Tiberius had become paranoid, depraved, surrounded by astrologers and flatterers, inventing new cruelties because the boredom of absolute power was rotting him from within. Into this place walks teenage Caligula. He knows Tiberius murdered his family. Everyone knows, but he cannot react. He cannot show grief, anger, or even awareness. A single wrong expression could mean death, so he does more than survive. He excels. Suetonius writes something chilling. There never was a better servant, nor a worse master. Caligula buries every hint of humanity inside himself. He observes, he studies. He becomes exactly what Tiberius wants him to be: obedient, amusing, harmless. For 6 years he plays this role flawlessly. 6 years learning from Rome's greatest monster how to break human beings. And then, in 37 AD, Tiberius dies. Some say natural causes, others say Caligula smothered him with a pillow. Either way, the 19-year-old hostage becomes the most powerful man on earth. Rome erupts in celebration. They think they are welcoming the son of beloved Germanicus. They have no idea. They have crowned a man who spent 6 years studying psychological torture at the feet of the empire's darkest mind. For 7 months, everything seems perfect. Caligula frees political prisoners, restores elections, cuts taxes. Rome breathes again. The nightmare seems over. Then he falls ill. No one knows what truly happened during those fevered days. But when Caligula rises from the sickness, something is broken inside him, irreparably, and the person who wakes is not the same person who fell asleep. What comes next is not random violence, it is not madness. Caligula builds a system, a machine with 5 distinct acts, each designed to destroy a different part of the human spirit. And the truly terrifying part is how methodical he was. You are seated at an imperial banquet. The wine glitters under the torchlight. Around you, 50 men who ruled the known world pretend not to notice what has just happened. Your wife was taken away by the emperor himself, her hand in his, disappearing behind the heavy purple curtains. She looked at you one last time, and you could do nothing. You still can do nothing. The only part of your body that moves is the involuntary trembling of your fingers around the silver cup. 20 minutes pass. Each second feels like a lifetime. The man beside you murmurs something about the wheat harvest in Egypt. His voice sounds distant, muffled, as if you were underwater. Another senator forces a laugh at a joke no one actually heard. The sound is hollow. Everyone knows what is happening. Everyone pretends not to know when your wife returns. Her face is empty. She sits beside you without a word. You want to touch her, to speak, to say anything, but your hands stay frozen. And then he sits down too. He does not return to his seat of honor. He sits between you, fills a fresh cup of wine, smiles, and begins to talk. He describes everything, every detail, every movement. He analyzes her as if discussing a philosophical theory. The other senators stare at their plates. No one dares interrupt him, and you must smile. You must nod. You must thank him for the honor of his attention. Because if you do not, if a single flicker of anger or pain crosses your face, tomorrow morning you may wake, but your children will not. This was not madness, it was engineering. A system built with surgical precision to dismantle the human soul. And the architect of this machine learned his craft by watching his own family exterminated, one by one, by the previous emperor. His name was Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, the boy once called Little Boots, Caligula. What he did to Rome was so methodical, so systematically cruel, that 2,000 years later we are still trying to comprehend how a single human mind could design such psychological destruction. And the most terrifying part is not what he did. It is that the system he built survived after his death. The machine kept working. Before you can understand how the machine functioned, you must understand something essential. Caligula was not born a monster. He was manufactured, and the process began when he was only 7 years old. The year is 14 AD. A small boy runs between the leather tents of a Roman military camp. He wears a miniature legionary uniform, complete with toy armor and little red boots that make the soldiers laugh when they see him. They call him Caligula because of those tiny boots. He is the son of Germanicus, the greatest general Rome has produced since Julius Caesar, a man the army loves more than the emperor himself. These soldiers, veterans, hardened by decades of war, lift the boy onto their shoulders like he is their own son. They believe he brings victory. Wherever Germanicus marches, little Caligula follows. The legion adores him. He grows up surrounded by unconditional love, protected by the most lethal military force on earth. He has no idea of what is coming. Caligula had 3 sisters, but one of them, Drusilla, was different. Ancient sources suggest that their relationship crossed lines that even Rome, with all its casual depravity, considered disturbing. Whether the rumors of incest were true or political propaganda invented by his enemies, no one can say for certain. What matters is that everyone believed it. And Caligula didn't just allow the rumors, he fed them deliberately. Then Drusilla died. Perhaps an illness, perhaps childbirth, the sources do not agree. But what came next reveals the core of Caligula's system, turning his personal pain into a weapon that would crush an entire empire. He did not simply mourn. He weaponized mourning. First, he ordered the Senate to declare Drusilla a goddess, not metaphorically, officially. Temples were built in her honor across the empire. Roman citizens were now legally required to worship her. Priests were appointed. Festivals were established. The religion of the Roman state was rewritten because one man was grieving. Then he declared an official period of mourning, and this is where his method turns monstrous. During this period, laughing was a capital crime. Taking a bath was a capital crime. Having dinner with your family was a capital crime. Let that sink in. If you were caught smiling during this enforced mourning, you could be executed. Your small daughter tells a joke at breakfast. What do? Do you laugh and risk death, or do you punish your child for simply being a child? Every natural moment of joy became a potential death sentence. He forced Rome to feel his pain, whether they wanted to or not. He was learning something crucial. He could legislate emotion, criminalize happiness, and make his internal world the reality everyone had to live in. And once he realized he could control how people felt, he began experimenting with what else he could take from them. The next phase is so disturbing that historians still debate whether it really happened or if it was propaganda created after his death. But here is what ancient sources claim, written by men who lived shortly after these events. Caligula established a brothel inside the Imperial palace, not for himself, for the public, as a business, and it was not staffed by common prostitutes. It was staffed by the sons and daughters of Rome's noble families, the aristocracy, the senators, the people who governed provinces and commanded legions. He sent heralds into the streets announcing the prices. Different rates for married women versus unmarried. Special rates for virgins from senatorial families. And here is the detail that shows how specifically cruel he was. He supposedly kept records, detailed ledgers with names, dates, and transactions. The bureaucratic accounting of human degradation. Think about what this does psychologically. If you are a Roman nobleman, your entire identity is built on family honor. Your lineage stretches back centuries. Your name means something, reputation, dignity, legacy, and now your daughter is being advertised in the streets like livestock, and there is an official record preserved in the archives of the state with her name in it. And you can do absolutely nothing because the alternative is execution for you, for her, for your entire family. He wasn't just taking their bodies, he was taking the one thing Roman aristocracy valued more than life itself, their reputation, their legacy, their name. But he still wasn't finished, because he realized something else. Public humiliation is powerful, but there is something even more devastating: private humiliation with public witnesses. Imagine the scene again, but now with all the context. You're at an imperial banquet, sitting with your wife. Around you, 50, maybe 100 other senators with their wives. Everyone is drinking wine that tastes like fear. Caligula stands. Silence is instant. He walks slowly between the tables, examining the women. His eyes are clinical, evaluative. He is choosing. He stops at your table, looks at your wife, inspects her the way you would inspect a horse you were considering buying, checks her teeth, her hair, the shape of her body. He does not ask permission. He doesn't even acknowledge your existence. He simply takes her hand and leads her away. You sit there. The man beside you stares into his wine with artificial intensity. Everyone pretends this isn't happening because everyone knows that if you stand up, if you object, if you show any emotion, you will not leave this room alive. Nor will she, nor will your children. So you sit, you drink, you wait. 20 minutes, 30, the conversation around you is forced, brittle. Someone makes a joke and it dies in the air before it lands. Finally, he brings her back. She sits down, she doesn't look at you, and then he sits as well. He doesn't leave, he stays. And in front of everyone, your friends, your colleagues, your rivals, he begins describing what just happened, in detail. Clinical, graphic detail. He rates her performance, compares her to the wives of other senators, makes jokes, and you must smile. You must laugh at his jokes. You must nod as if all of this were perfectly normal, perfectly acceptable. He isn't just violating your wife, He is destroying you. Everything that makes you a man in Roman society, your ability to protect your family, your authority, your dignity, he strips away in front of everyone who matters. And tomorrow, you will have to return. You will have to smile at these same people. Pretend nothing happened, while everyone knows exactly what happened. This is the genius of the machine. He is not only destroying individuals, he is destroying the social fabric itself, making everyone complicit, making everyone silent, witnesses to each other's humiliation. But this is only the third phase. And what comes next is so much worse that modern psychologists study it as a case study in systematic psychological torture. Because Caligula realizes there is a bond even stronger than marriage, the bond between parent and child. This next part is almost impossible to witness. Caligula begins executing people not for treason, not for crimes, but simply because he is bored, irritated, or curious about what might happen. And then he develops a new protocol. If he is executing someone's son, the father must watch, not from afar, from up close, front row. But what elevates this from simple cruelty to systematic torture is what came next. The detail recorded by Suetonius: a father watches his son executed, and immediately afterward Caligula orders that same man to be brought to the Imperial palace. For dinner that night, the body is still warm. The father sits at Caligula's table, and Caligula does nothing but watch him. He simply watches, studying his face like a scientist observing an experiment. He wants to see if the father will cry, if he will show grief, even the slightest flicker of pain. Because if he does, if he shows any emotion at all, Caligula will know that he hasn't T-broken him completely, that there is still something human left to destroy. So the father sits there, eating food he cannot taste, forcing conversation he cannot hear, while his son's body cools in some alley. And the man who ordered his death analyzes his facial expressions for entertainment. Caligula is not merely taking away his child, he is taking away his right to mourn. He is transforming the deepest human bond, parent and child, into a source of terror instead of comfort. Because now, if you love someone, that love becomes a weapon against you. The more you care, the more vulnerable you are, the easier he can hurt you. He is making love itself dangerous. This is the final perfection of the machine. He no longer needs to threaten you directly, he simply needs to exist. Because everything you love, your wife, your children, your friends, are now treasons. Every human connection is a vulnerability he can exploit whenever he wishes. But here is what no one expected. The machine had a fatal flaw. Because while Caligula was busy destroying senators and nobles, men trained to endure humiliation, who understood politics, who could rationalize suffering as the price of survival, he made a catastrophic mistake. He turned his casual, everyday cruelty toward the one type of person he could not afford to break. A soldier's name was Cassius Chaerea, a senior officer of the Praetorian Guard, the emperor's personal bodyguards, the elite, men who stand inches from Caligula every single day, armed, trained, lethal. Chaerea had one physical trait that Caligula found endlessly amusing: a high-pitched voice. And Caligula, true to form, never let it go. Every day, new jokes, new ridicule. And here is the detail that reveals how casual Caligula's cruelty had become. During the daily password ritual, a formal military protocol, Caligula signed Chaerea passwords like Venus or deliberately feminine or sexual words designed to make the other soldiers snicker. Day after day, week after week. For Caligula, it was throwaway humor, barely worth remembering. For Chaerea, every joke was a drop of poison. Caligula had made a fatal miscalculation. Senators can be humiliated because they want to live. They have estates, children, legacies. Soldiers do not think like that. And Chaerea was a soldier. He was a man trained for violence, a man who stood at the emperor's side every day with a sword at his hip. And Caligula had just taught him that life under this emperor was not worth living. Caligula had become so confident in his system, so certain that fear would always win, that he forgot the most basic rule of predators: never corner something that can kill you. What happened next took less than 60 seconds, but it changed the course of Roman history. January 24th, 41 AD, Caligula is attending theatrical games. He is in a good mood. He has been organizing shows and performances. In a few hours, a play will begin. Around midday, he decides to leave through a narrow underground corridor, a service passage connecting the theater to the palace. It is dimly lit, claustrophobic, with rough stone walls on both sides. The conspirators are waiting. Chaerea steps forward as Caligula approaches. This is normal. Guards always check with the emperor. He asks for the day's password. And Caligula, completely unaware, confident in his invincibility, gives one final sneering, mocking reply. It is the last thing he ever says. Chaerea shouts, "Take this," and drives his sword up under Caligula's ribs. Caligula staggers, tries to run, but the corridor is too narrow. There's nowhere to go. Conspirators block both ends. They swarm in. 30 stab wounds, according to the sources. 30 times the blade enters. They do not stop until nothing remains that could possibly be alive. 4 years of rage, humiliation, and terror released in 60 seconds of frenzied violence. The monster is dead. And that is when things get worse. The conspirators do not stop with Caligula. They find his wife Caesarea. She knows what happened. She can hear the screams. She begs, pleads, tries to reason with men who have just killed an emperor. They stab her to death. Then they find the nursery. Caligula's daughter, Julia Drusilla, is 2 years old, maybe 3. The sources disagree. A soldier picks her up, and while she cries for her mother, he swings her head against a marble wall. They must ensure there is no heir. No one who could grow up and seek revenge, so they kill a toddler. This is what happens when the machine breaks. It does not simply stop, it devours everything connected to it. For a few hours, perhaps an entire afternoon, it seemed as if Rome might actually change. The Senate gathered, they debated. Some argued that the Republic should be restored, that Rome should free itself from emperors entirely and return to the old ways. For the first time in generations, real discussion filled the chamber. A moment where history could have turned in a different direction. And then, the Praetorian Guard made their choice. While the Senate was speaking, the guards were looting the palace, moving through halls, ripping open chests, taking jewelry, coins, anything of value. One of them heard a sound behind a curtain. He pulled it backhand, found a man hiding there, trembling, middle-aged, stuttering, limping Claudius, Caligula's uncle. The embarrassment of the Julio-Claudian family. A man everyone assumed harmless, perhaps even brain damage from childhood illness. But the guard didn't see a harmless fool. He saw an emperor. The Praetorians lifted Claudius onto their shoulders and carried him back to their camp. They proclaimed him emperor on the spot, and while the Senate was still debating the future of the Republic, the army had already decided. The machine survived. Here is what haunts this story. Caligula ruled for less than 4 years. 4 years, a blink, a footnote in Roman history. And yet, 2,000 years later, we are still speaking his name. Because Caligula proved something terrifying about power. He showed that the entire machinery of a static's laws, its army, its economy, its bureaucracy can be turned into instruments of personal psychological warfare. He didn't operate outside the system, he made the system his weapon. The ledgers of the Imperial brothel, there was bureaucracy doing its job. The forced mourning for Drusilla, law enforcement doing its job. The banquets where he violated senators' wives, Imperial hospitality doing its job. Every atrocity he committed was technically legal, because he was the law. And when he died, the system didn't die with him. It simply found a new operator. That is the true horror. Not that one man was a monster, but that the machine he built kept functioning without him. Look at what came after. Nero burning Rome and blaming Christians. Domitian executing people for looking at him the wrong way. Commodus forcing senators to watch him fight in the arena. Elagabalus committing acts so disturbing they can't even be repeated today. The blueprint remained. The machine kept evolving. Because Caligula revealed a truth Rome could never unlearn: when one person controls everything. The army, the law, the economy, the culture. There is no mechanism to stop them. No checks, no balances. Only the hope that they die, or are killed. And even then, the system simply finds someone new. Suetonius wrote that Caligula was the best of servants and the worst of masters. He learned tyranny by pretending to be the perfect subject. He studied under Tiberius, watched how a monster operated, learned every technique, every psychological tool, and then perfected it. That is the warning, the real lesson. The greatest threats don't announce themselves. They learn, they adapt, they wear the mask of loyalty, until the day they don't need it anymore. There is one more thing. After Claudius became emperor, he destroyed almost all of Caligula's records, with the ledgers, the correspondence, the documents. Burned the histories we have were written decades later by men like Suetonius and Tacitus, working from rumors, memories, and fragments. Which means the story you just heard, the 5 acts, the systematic terror of the machine, is only what survived the purge. Imagine what was lost. Imagine what was so disturbing that even in an empire that crucified thousands and fed people to lions, they decided it needed to be erased from history. Caligula ruled for 3 years, 9 months, and 8 days. In that time, he built a machine that showed every future tyrant exactly how to break human beings systematically, psychologically, completely. And the blueprint never disappeared. It is still out there, echoing across the centuries. There is a question we cannot ignore. Why did the machine work so well? Why didn't anyone stop Caligula sooner? The answer reveals something deeply disturbing about human nature, and about how power structures decay. First, there was collective memory. Rome had just emerged from decades of civil war. Wars that killed millions, destroyed entire families, turned provinces into wastelands. The empire had been built on rivers of blood, and everyone remembered. So when Caligula took power, the dominant thought was simple: anything is better than civil war again. Even a monster on the throne seemed preferable to total chaos. Second, There was systematic isolation. Caligula didn't attack everyone at once. He selected targets carefully. One family this week, another next month, and every time he destroyed someone, he did it publicly, forcing everyone else to watch, turning witnesses into silent accomplices. If you stayed quiet while your neighbor was destroyed, maybe you would be spared. Each act of violence eliminated one victim and morally compromised hundreds of onlookers. Third, there was gradual normalization. Caligula didn't begin with the worst atrocities. He escalated step by step. A Jobia, a small humiliation there, then something bigger and bigger. Each step was only slightly worse than the last, so there was never a clear line where anyone could say, this is where we stop. When you are being boiled alive, you don't notice the water getting hotter until it's too late. Fourth and most important was the Roman imperial system itself. The emperor controlled the army, the treasury, the law. There were no checks and balances, no independent institutions. If the emperor wanted you dead, you died. Simple as that, and everyone knew it. But here's the part that makes Caligula's story relevant today. This isn't just a tale about a mad tyrant from 2,000 years ago. It's a case study of how systems can be corrupted, and how absolute power doesn't just rot the person who holds it. It poisons the society that surrounds it. Caligula didn't need constant violence. Most of his reign was relatively peaceful in terms of numbers. He wasn't executing thousands daily. He simply created an atmosphere where arbitrary violence was always possible. You never knew when it would be your turn. That uncertainty, that constant tension was itself a weapon. He turned every social interaction into a potential landmine. Every banquet, every conversation, every glance could be interpreted as disloyalty. Once that environment exists, people begin policing themselves, monitoring their own thoughts, expressions, even dreams. The tyrant no longer needs to be everywhere, because he lives inside everyone's head. This was Caligula's final innovation. He didn't just use power to destroy people, he used power to destroy the very idea that resistance was possible. He made horror seem inevitable, permanent, part of the natural order. And once a society accepts that, it is already lost. But the story doesn't end in total despair. Because remember, Quiria killed Caligula. One man tired of humiliation decided he would rather die with dignity than live in shame, and those 60 seconds of courage ended 4 years of terror. What does this tell us? That systems of oppression, no matter how powerful, are fundamentally fragile. They depend on a shared illusion of invincibility. The moment someone breaks that illusion, the entire structure can collapse. Caligula believed he was a god, untouchable, and then a blade slid beneath his ribs, and it turned out he bled like any other man. But here's the part we cannot forget. Even when the monster dies, the system can survive. The Praetorians who killed Caligula did not restore the Republic. They simply found another emperor. The machine kept running because the machine was never about Caligula himself. It was about the structure that allowed someone like him to exist. And that is the final lesson. It is not enough to remove the tyrant. You must dismantle the system that created him. You must build safeguards, checks, balances, institutions that cannot be bent by a single man. Because if you don't, you are simply waiting for the next Caligula. 2,000 years separate us from those Roman banquets where men watched their wives be taken away. 2,000 years of progress and civilization. But the uncomfortable truth is this. The machine Caligula built a blueprint for breaking the human spirit through arbitrary power was never destroyed. It simply went dormant, waiting in anywhere power concentrates without oversight. Anywhere a single person or group can act without consequences. Anywhere fear replaces law and the machine wakes again. Caligula showed us what it looks like when the machine is fully operational. The only question that remains is, what will we do with that knowledge? 3 years, 9 months, and 8 days. That is all it took to turn the mightiest empire on earth into a laboratory for mass psychological torture. And the worst part was not the speed, but that no one knew how to stop it until it was almost too late. Until one soldier with a sword decided that some things are worse than death. This is the true story of Caligula. Not a tale of one evil man, but of how entire civilizations can be hijacked. How the unthinkable becomes routine, how silence becomes complicity, and how, even in the deepest darkness, a single act of courage can change everything. Never forget that. Never forget any of it, because the machine is always there, always waiting, and the only thing that keeps it asleep is our memory of what it can do.